being opposed to something, so do keep that in mind. So altogether, the sentence says, but I'm torn between reality and my ideals, not to mention, my parents are totally against it. Now moving on to the final response. 제 경우 아주 힘든 결정을 내려야 할 때는 비교 리스트를 만들어요. Now apparently according to my producer, a pro and con list, right, which is 비교 리스트, is something that's not really common in Korea. So I asked my friends around because I was so curious because I used it in writing class, in my life, almost on a daily basis when I have things to sort out in my head. So I got really confused and asked my friends around, do you use a pro and con list? And apparently, half of my friends do and the other half don't. So you can either utilize it or completely veto it if you're not interested. But this is how I really organize my thoughts. Now let's get back to the screen and complete these sentences. 제 경우 아주 힘든 결정을 내려야 할 때는 지금 트랜sl레이션을 해야 되잖아요. 뭐뭐 해야 할 때, whenever I have to, whenever I have to. 뭐뭐 해야 할 때는이라는 뜻이죠. Whenever I have to, 뭘 해야 되죠? 힘든 결정을 내려야 할 때. Make a hard decision, a really hard decision, a very difficult decision. A word I want to use today is tough decision. Tough decision. Now, tough here is a little bit different from, the beef jerky is really tough, but it means very difficult to make. So whenever I have to make a tough decision, comma, I make a pros and cons list. Now, let's finally go on to the last part of the sentences. 종이를 반으로 접어서 한쪽에는 하고 싶은 이유를 다른 한쪽에는 하지 말아야 할 이유를 적어봅니다. I fold the paper in half, 종이를 반으로 접어서 그리고 and then what do I do? I write, right? What am I going to write? 지난주에 저희 배웠었죠. 장점 또는 지금 하고 싶은 이유. 이건 장점이잖아요. positive. 다른 한쪽에 하지 말아야 할 이유. 이거는 negative, cons. 그러면 여기서는 어떤 단어를 써야 할까요, 여러분? I fold the paper in half and write the pros. Pros means positives. Pros on one side. 한쪽에는 좋은 점들. 내가 하고 싶은 이유들을 쓰고 and then what do you do? And 단점들은 뭐죠? Cons. Cons on the other. Now, you don't have to, on the other. Now, you don't have to write twice because the sentences are parallel. So, altogether, the sentence says, I fold the paper in half and write the pros on one side and cons on the other. Were you guys able to follow along? I certainly hope so. Now let's take everything we learned so far and hear it in a complete dialogue. So listen up carefully.
Dear fellow tweeters, my future has been looking awfully gray these days. I've been jobless since graduation.
It sounds like you're just dwelling on your thoughts at home. How about organizing those thoughts about your future into written words?
I really want to work in film, but I'm torn between reality and my ideals. Not to mention my parents are totally against it.
Whenever I have to make a tough decision, I make a pros and cons list. I fold a paper in half and write the pros on one side and cons on the other.
Don't they have the most fantastic and soothing voices? They always make my dialogue sound a little bit better, and I do really appreciate that. I hope you guys are able to understand everything and follow along. Now let's take a couple of the grammar points we learned today and use it in more expressions. Take a look at the screen. 너무 무리하시는 것 같아요. 아까 뭐뭐 하는 것 같아요는 뭐라고 했죠, 여러분? 뭐뭐 하는 것 같아요. I know you guys remember because I emphasized it very well, I think. It sounds like, right? 뭐뭐 하는 것 같아요. It sounds like, 자, 무리하다는 뭘까요, 여러분? Working too hard. 자, 누가 of course, every time have to have the subject, right? So it sounds like you're working too hard. 너무 무리하시는 것 같아요. It sounds like you're working too hard. Yes, some of us work too hard and we should take a couple breaks. Moving on to the next phrase. 정말 하고 싶은 일은 뉴스 보도 분야입니다. 아까 뭐뭐가 정말 하고 싶다 배웠었죠? We emphasized the abbreviations twice today. What was it? I hope you guys remember by now. I really what? I really wanna 뉴스 보도일 분야입니다. 뉴스 보도 is news broadcasting. So the complete sentence will look something like this. I really want to work in. Remember, it's in because it's an entire industry that you're referring to. Work in news broadcasting. This way, you're not limiting yourself only to an anchor position or a reporter position, but you're really referring to the whole entire industry as a whole. I really want to work in news broadcasting. Last but not least, we have 친구들의 반대가 너무 심해요. 친구들의 반대가 너무 심해요. 아까 부모님의 반대가 너무 심해요 했었죠. I hope you guys remember that's one of the last things we learned today, right? 자, 먼저